Professor Raskin, you have dedicated years to instructing the nation regarding morals, regarding responsibility, and regarding constitutional tenets. You authored a volume concerning democracy, a very touching publication. However, I possess a single straightforward query. During the time you were concealing your spouse's wealth from the American populace for 8 months, which constitutional tenet was that? The phrasing lingered in the atmosphere. Acute, exact, fatal. A CNN town hall event. Prime viewing hours. The studio spectators packed so densely you could perceive the strain radiating like warmth. The room's left flank featured resistance badges fastened to coats and NPR satchels gripped firmly. Shirts defending democracy in various hues of indignation. The right flank displayed MAGA caps worn with dignity. Gadsden banners draped across shoulders. Let's go, Brandon Gear. Everything. 2 nations, 1 chamber about to witness a judgment. Jake Tapper was seated between them, already realizing he had surrendered command of this situation before it even commenced. This was not destined to be a supervised discussion. This was destined to be an indictment. J.D. Vance occupied the middle of the platform. Composed, motionless. That marine posture that never truly fades regardless of how many years are passed in business attire rather than fatigues. The litigator who had debated matters before magistrates, who consumed attorneys for their morning meal. The Yale law alumnus who never lost sight of his origins or whom he was truly battling for. Prepared. Jamie Raskin was positioned across from him, a professor of constitutional law, 25 years instructing at American University, Harvard Law prior to that, primary impeachment director, member of the January 6th committee, the academic, the ethical tone of the Democratic Party, the morals campaigner. He repositioned his spectacles, an anxious tick, a tiny motion, yet everybody noticed it. Vance observed it and stored it away. That tick would be useful subsequently. We are gathered this evening because Professor Raskin possesses views, potent views, concerning ethics, concerning competing interests, concerning the Supreme Court, concerning Donald Trump, concerning dishonesty in leadership. He has penned editorials, delivered addresses, lodged grievances, conducted inquiries, the moral tone of Congress, they label him, the constitutional spirit of the Democratic Party, the ethics campaigner who keeps the influential answerable. Pause. Allow it to respire. However, here is what is intriguing. While the professor was occupied schooling everybody else concerning ethics, he neglected to adhere to ethical regulations himself. Federal statutes state you must reveal your partner's earnings and holdings. An elementary regulation, high school civics grade. And Professor Raskin? He instructs on constitutional law. A quarter-century educating law pupils regarding government morals, regarding openness, regarding the holy obligation of public officials to be truthful with the American populace. Another pause, more extended. But he delayed 8 months, 8, to inform Americans that his spouse obtained over $1 million in equity from a corporation with profound ties to the Federal Reserve. That isn't an error. That isn't a lapse. That is an infraction. Therefore, let us discuss ethics, Professor. Your preferred topic. Let us discuss yours. The introduction was complete. The snare was laid. Time to trigger it. Professor Raskin did what academics do when confronted. He sermonized, launched directly into the rehearsed statements. The constitutional necessities for ethical administration. The founder's concept of open Republican leadership. James Madison's insight regarding no individual being an arbiter in his own matter. Thomas Jefferson's cautions concerning dishonesty. Alexander Hamilton's support for liability in public roles. His voice possessed that attribute, that scholarly pitch, the tolerant professor clarifying intricate constitutional theory to simpler intellects who couldn't possibly grasp the subtleties. The academic, safe in his supreme understanding. The moral expert who had perused more volumes, examined more history, comprehended more profoundly than anyone else in the chamber. The left section of the spectators agreed in rhythm. This was their man. This was how guidance sounded. Schooled, considerate, ethical. The grown-ups in the chamber. Vance merely stood there, limbs folded, hearing. 30 seconds. 45. A complete minute. Allow the professor to heat up. Allow him to get at ease. Allow him to believe he was directing the story. The Founding Fathers' Greatest Hits compilation. Madison to Jefferson, to Hamilton, and returning again. The entire cycle. Then Vance extended into his coat, slowly, intentionally, extracted a solitary paper, a financial disclosure document submitted in late summer, the year before last. Public archive. Anybody could view it. He didn't disturb, didn't utter a phrase, merely held it up sufficiently high for the lenses to capture it, for the spectators to view, for Professor Raskin to spot. The professor spotted it. Mid-Madison, the stream halted. Hand went to his spectacles. Adjustment, rapid, nearly subconscious. But there it was, the anxious tick, the realization that things were about to go very badly. Vance spoke, calm, level, that prosecutor pitch that doesn't require loudness to convey burden. I have your financial report here, Professor. Public file. Anyone can retrieve it online. Submitted in late summer, the year before last. Now, the report itself is fairly standard material. You are an affluent man. Assets, earnings, securities. The typical collection of someone who has served in Congress for years. Nothing unexpected about most of it. Pause. Allow the expectation to rise. But here is what is intriguing. Here is what captured my focus. It isn't what is inside this report. It is what is absent. What is not here that ought to be here. What you failed to tell the American populace. That is where this narrative becomes compelling. The chamber adjusted, individuals leaning closer. This wasn't going to be a scholarly discussion any longer. Allow me to ensure I comprehend this, Professor. Federal statutes. Very distinct. Very plain. If your partner gets earnings exceeding $1,000 from a loan origin, you report it. If your partner gets holdings valued over $1,000, you report them. And you perform this rapidly, within weeks, a month, perhaps 6 weeks maximum. Not a year. Not when it is suitable. Not when someone uncovers it and poses awkward queries. You report it quickly. That is the regulation. Elementary regulation. High school civics grade. Raskin parted his lips, began to talk. Vance continued forward. Now, you are a constitutional law teacher. 25 years instructing at American University. Instructing pupils regarding government morals, regarding openness, regarding the statutes that direct public officials, regarding the holy obligation we owe to the American populace to be truthful with them concerning our funds. You recognize these statutes better than nearly anyone. You teach them. You evaluate pupils on their grasp of them. These aren't complicated tenets. These aren't vague laws. This is fundamental ethics legislation. The left section of the spectators appeared less at ease. Now, where was this leading? Here is what transpired. Your spouse, Sarah Bloom Raskin, served on the directorate of a firm, a financial technology firm, was remunerated for that duty, was remunerated well, received nearly 200,000 units of equity. That is a vast amount of equity, Professor. More equity than most Americans will ever possess in their entire existence. Almost 200,000 units. Vance allowed that figure to rest. Let people digest it. And subsequently, she traded those units. Got paid. How much? Well, that is the intriguing portion. She obtained over $1 million. Million with an M. More currency than most Americans will earn in 30 years of arduous labor. More currency than many households will witness in a lifetime. A treasure from selling equity she acquired from serving on a corporate directorate. The chamber was hushed. Now everyone listening, everyone computing. Now, let us perform the calculation together, Professor. Federal statute says you report within weeks. She traded the equity. You submitted the report 8 months later. That is not a few weeks. That is not even a few months. That is 8 months, over 240 days. That isn't tardy. That isn't a lapse. That is concealing. Raskin's hand went to his spectacles again. Third instance. The tick was becoming apparent to everyone observing. But here is what renders this truly intriguing. Here is what elevates this from a clerical infraction to something that exposes character. Allow me to paint you a scene of what was transpiring during those 8 months when you were concealing this treasure from the American populace. Vance's tone altered, became more intimate, more straightforward. Imagine yourself as an ordinary American. You work an ordinary occupation. Perhaps you earn $50,000, $60,000 annually if you are fortunate. You receive a premium at work. $500. You are thrilled about that $500. That is actual currency. That is provisions for a month. That is a vehicle installment. That is perhaps a supper out at a fine eatery, something you couldn't usually manage. 500 signifies something to you. The right section of the spectators nodded. They understood precisely what he was discussing. And you submit your levies every year on schedule. You declare that $500 premium. You declare every dollar you earn because you must. Because if you don't, the IRS pursues you. Fines, interest, reviews, perhaps worse if they believe you are attempting to hide something. You adhere to the regulations not because you are a holy person, but because you must. Because there are repercussions if you don't. He pivoted back to Raskin. Meanwhile, Professor Raskin's spouse receives over $1 million from trading equity. A treasure. Life-altering currency. Early retirement currency. And he utters nothing. Files no report. Tells no one. Months pass. 1 month. 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, still nothing. The American populace who provide his wages, who rely on him to act for them, who anticipate truthfulness from their voted officials. They know nothing regarding this treasure. The left section was silent now. Uneasy silence. But during those 8 months, Professor Raskin was very occupied. Very conspicuous, very vocal. He was directing the second impeachment of President Trump, delivering addresses regarding responsibility, regarding the rule of law, regarding holding powerful people answerable for their deeds. He was on television conducting interviews, lecturing America regarding ethics and dishonesty, and the holy obligation of public servants to adhere to the law. Pause. Allow the insincerity to absorb. He was probing January 6th, serving on the committee, making primetime television appearances, speaking about safeguarding democracy, preserving the Constitution, maintaining the supreme standards of public duty. His voice resonating with moral command. The constitutional law teacher instructing America regarding the principles that make our system function. Another pause. And, the entire time, the complete duration, he was in violation of federal statutes. The entire time he was lecturing you regarding ethics, he was breaking ethics regulations himself. The entire time he was insisting on openness from others, he was concealing his own family's treasure. The entire time he was speaking regarding responsibility, he was declining to be answerable. Someone in the spectators uttered something. Couldn't distinguish the terms, but the mood was distinct. Betrayal. Revulsion. Now, Professor Raskin has a justification. He always possesses a justification. His son passed away during this interval. Tommy Raskin. Actual tragedy. Authentic tragedy. Everyone empathizes. Everyone ought to empathize. Losing a child is agony beyond fantasy. It is sorrow that shatters you, changes you eternally. No one disputes that. No one belittles that. Vance's tone softened. Authentic compassion there. But here is the difficulty with utilizing that sorrow as a justification for this infraction. The ethics grievances that were lodged against you. They recognized your loss. They stated you should be afforded comprehension and space, given what you were enduring. Anyone would state the same. Sorrow is real. Agony is real. Then the tone shifted harder. But they highlighted something significant. Something you cannot explain away. If Representative Raskin was capable of fulfilling his obligations leading the impeachment assault against President Trump, it is rational to anticipate he should have been capable of submitting paperwork. And that is the reality you cannot flee, Professor. The chamber went very still. You weren't too grief-stricken to direct an impeachment. You weren't too grief-stricken to deliver addresses on the House floor. You weren't too grief-stricken to conduct television interviews on CNN and MSNBC. You weren't too grief-stricken to pen a volume regarding your experiences and gather a substantial deposit for it. You weren't too grief-stricken to do any of that. Vance leaned forward slightly. But submitting federal ethics paperwork regarding over $1 million, that was too much. That was where the sorrow became insurmountable. Not directing impeachment, not penning volumes, not conducting television, just the paperwork regarding the currency. That is what you couldn't handle. Raskin attempted to talk, voice defensive, higher than prior. The loss of my son was respect for your loss, Professor. Authentic respect. But your sorrow didn't halt you from performing your occupation. It didn't halt you from directing impeachment, from delivering addresses, from probing, from lecturing America regarding ethics and responsibility. Your sorrow was specific. It only halted you from revealing over $1 million to the American populace. That isn't sorrow. That is convenience. The silence that ensued was weighty, dense. You could hear someone clear their throat 3 rows back. A camera shutter snapped. That was it. Raskin's stance altered, the assured academic posture slipping. Shoulders less squared. Hand to spectacles again. 4th instance now. Everyone could perceive the tick. 10 seconds elapsed. 15. Someone in the gallery shifted in their chair. The noise seemed loud in the quiet. Vance allowed it to extend. Allow people to digest what they had heard. Allow the burden of it to land. No necessity to hurry. The proof spoke for itself. The insincerity was distinct. The infraction was recorded. Allow the audience to sit with it. Then he spoke again. Direct, plain. So let me inquire of you directly, Professor Raskin. Yes or no? Did you or did you not violate federal financial disclosure statutes by waiting 8 months to report your spouse's receipt of over $1 million? Raskin's mouth parted. Shut. Parted again. The constitutional law teacher hunting for phrases. Finally managed something. The technicalities of the submission necessities need to be comprehended in the context of, yes or no, Professor. It isn't a constitutional law test. It isn't a theoretical query for your pupils. It is a simple yes or no query. Did you violate the statute? Yes or no. The pause was longer than comfortable. Much longer. People in the spectators leaning closer. Cameras zooming in for close-ups of Raskin's visage. The struggle visible. The calculation. What could he say? The submission was tardy, but there were extenuating. Yes, thank you, Professor. The submission was tardy. 8 months tardy. You violated federal disclosure statutes. While lecturing America regarding responsibility, you were violating responsibility requirements yourself. While insisting on openness from others, you were concealing your own family's treasure. While serving on committees probing dishonesty, you were in violation of ethics regulations. Vance turned away from Raskin, faced the lens, spoke directly to America. Rules for thee, but not for you. That isn't merely a criticism of Professor Raskin. That is his actual practice. That is his actual method regarding ethics and responsibility. He lectures everyone else regarding following the regulations. Then he breaks those same regulations himself. He insists on openness from everyone else. Then he hides his own family's currency. He probes dishonesty in others, while committing his own infractions. He allowed that to rest for a beat. That is insincerity. That is the morass. That is everything incorrect with Washington in one man. That is Jamie Raskin, the ethics preacher who violates ethics. The right section of the spectators erupted. Applause. Some rising. Finally, someone was stating it. Someone was calling it out. The left section sat quiet, some checking their devices, verifying the facts. Could they verify them? Yes. Public record. Financial disclosure form. Ethics grievances lodged. All of it documented. All of it real. Some looked troubled, others defiant. But no one could deny the facts. Within minutes, social media detonated. Ethics preachers started trending. Conservative outlets cutting segments. This moment, this admission, this exposure playing on loop. Fox, Newsmax. ON. The confession repeated again and again. Progressive media attempted to defend him. Republicans attacking grieving father. But it wasn't working. The facts were too distinct. The timeline too documented. The insincerity too apparent. He had directed impeachment while concealing violations. That was undeniable. Small donors who had given $25 or $50 to his campaigns saw this, understood what it meant. Their currency, their hard-earned currency that they had scraped together to back someone they thought was battling for them, funding a man who hid over $1 million while lecturing them regarding values and ethics. That betrayal sliced deep. Vance wasn't finished. That is round one. Over $1 million hidden for 8 months, while lecturing you regarding openness, while insisting on responsibility from others, while probing dishonesty. He was in violation himself. Brief pause. Allow them to anticipate. But here is what renders it worse. Here is what elevates this from an infraction to a scandal. Let us discuss where that currency came from, regarding what his spouse did to earn it, regarding the phone calls she made, regarding the special favors she obtained, regarding the government access she utilized for private profit. Round 2 is regarding dishonesty. Real dishonesty. The type that makes your blood seethe. Share this. Comment below. Did he violate ethics statutes? Because round 2 is going to make round 1 resemble a parking citation. Raskin attempted to recover, attempted to pivot, reset, get back to terrain he could defend. Started to speak with that professor voice, that moral command tone. If we want to have a serious conversation regarding ethics, perhaps we should discuss Supreme Court justices who, no, one word, sharp, clean, final. Vance cut him off. No hesitation, no apology. Just no. We aren't changing subjects, Professor. We are following the currency. Because that over $1 million your spouse received, it didn't appear magically. It didn't materialize out of thin air. It came from somewhere very specific. From a firm. And the narrative of how your spouse got on that firm's directorate, and what she did to make that firm successful, and how much currency she made when she cashed out. That narrative is where this gets truly intriguing. Raskin's hand went to his spectacles. 5th instance. The tick was becoming a running jest. Now some people in the right section, spectators, laughing every time he did it. They had caught on. Every time he was uncomfortable. Every time he knew something bad was coming. Spectacles, allow me to ensure I comprehend this. Professor, your spouse departs the Treasury Department. She was Deputy Secretary. Very impressive position. Very powerful position. One of the top financial officials in the United States government. And immediately, I mean immediately, the next month, she joins the directorate of a financial technology firm, private sector firm, Reserve Trust, based in Colorado, trying to get something very valuable from the government. Vance paused. Allow that to sink in. Now, you have spent years attacking what you call the revolving door, former government officials departing public service, and immediately going to work for firms in the industries they used to regulate, using their connections, using their access, using their knowledge of how the system functions to enrich themselves and their new employers. You have held hearings regarding this. You have penned editorials. You have called it dishonesty. You have demanded it be stopped. You have said former officials shouldn't be able to monetize their government connections for private gain. The professor attempted to interrupt. The revolving door is a problem across the government. Yes, you have said that many times. You have attacked it repeatedly, called it systemic dishonesty, said it undermines public trust, demanded reform, lectured regarding the founder's fear of government officials enriching themselves through public service. Vance's voice got harder. And yet, your spouse, Sarah Bloom Raskin, is the textbook definition of revolving door dishonesty. Deputy Secretary of the Treasury to private firm directorate in 1 month. 1 month, Professor. That isn't just passing through the revolving door. That is setting up permanent residence in it. The left section shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't going how they had hoped. Here is what transpired. Simple narrative. Easy to follow. Your spouse joins this firm's directorate. The firm wants something from the government. Something very valuable. Something that almost no firms get. They want direct access to the Federal Reserve payment system. That is called a master account. Very rare, very valuable. Lets a firm move currency directly through the Fed. No middleman, no intermediary bank. Just straight access to the government's currency system. He allowed people to digest that. So the firm applies, asks the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City for this access. The Fed looks at the application and says, no, denied, doesn't meet the requirements. Application rejected. That is how it usually functions. The Fed is careful, selective, protective of access to the payment system. Most firms that ask get denied. Standard procedure. Pause. Here comes the key portion. But here is where it gets intriguing. After that denial, something transpired. Your spouse made a phone call. To whom? To Esther George. Who is Esther George? President of the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City. The same Fed bank that just denied the application. Your spouse, the former Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, calls the Fed president regarding a firm she is on the directorate of. A firm that was just denied what it wanted. The chamber went very quiet. Now let us pause there for a second. That is intriguing coming from you, Professor, because you have spent literally years attacking exactly this kind of behavior. Former government officials using their connections for private gain, using their titles, using their access, using their relationships with people still in government to benefit their new private employers. You have called this dishonesty. You have demanded investigations. You have held hearings. You have written legislation to try to stop it. Vance's voice dripped with barely contained contempt. And yet, your spouse does exactly that. Makes a phone call. Uses her former Deputy Treasury Secretary title. Her connections. Her access to a Fed president. On behalf of a firm that is paying her. A firm that wants a favor from the government. She calls her old government friend on behalf of her new private employer. That isn't just revolving door. That is revolving door with a VIP pass. Raskin attempted, voice getting desperate now. My wife's qualifications were... Your spouse is very qualified, Professor. No one disputes that. Former Fed governor, former Deputy Treasury Secretary, brilliant legal mind, impressive credentials. But that is exactly the point. She used those qualifications, those connections, those relationships, to help a firm that was paying her, a firm that wanted a government favor. That is what you attack. That is what you call dishonesty. But when your family does it, suddenly it is just qualifications and experience. The prosecutor was warming up. You could feel it. The systematic build, the evidence accumulating, the case being constructed piece by piece. Here is what transpired next. After that phone call, after the former Deputy Treasury Secretary contacted the Fed president, the firm reapplied, claimed they had changed their business model, made some tweaks to their application. And guess what? Approved. The same application that was denied before your spouse called the Fed president. Suddenly, approved after she called. The firm got the master account. Direct Fed access. Something almost no firms get. Something everyone wants. They got it. He allowed that to sit, then drove it home. And not just got it, Professor. They were the only financial technology firm of their kind to ever receive this kind of access. The only one. Everyone else in their industry denied. Your spouse's firm approved, right after she called the Fed. Just a coincidence. Just good timing. Just lucky breaks. The sarcasm was thick enough to cut. Think about your own life. Think about trying to get something from the government. Regular Americans trying to get a business loan, trying to get a bank account for their small business. You apply to 10 banks. All of them say no. You try to appeal. You call, leave messages. No one calls you back. No one helps you. You are on your own. Just another person trying to make it. No connections. No access. No former Deputy Treasury Secretary in your family. The right section of the spectators nodded. They knew exactly that feeling. But if you are Sarah Bloom Raskin, if you are the spouse of a powerful congressman, if you used to be Deputy Treasury Secretary, one phone call. That is all it takes. One call to your old friend at the Fed. Application that was denied suddenly gets approved. Special access that no one else gets. You get it. Why? Connections. Access. Power. The kind of power regular Americans don't have and never will. Vance turned back to Raskin directly. So your spouse gets on the directorate, gets paid, gets equity, lots of equity. The firm gets unprecedented Fed access, gets successful, gets valuable. And then your spouse leaves the directorate, sells her equity. How much? Over $1 million. Million with an M, for making one phone call, for using her government connections, for monetizing the relationships she built while in public service. The professor was breathing faster now. You could hear it through his microphone. Audible. Stressed. The academic unraveling under prosecutorial pressure. That isn't the revolving door, Professor. That is the revolving door, express lane with a fast pass. That is everything you claim to oppose. Everything you attack in Republicans. Everything you lecture America about. Your spouse did it. Your family profited from it. Over $1 million from it. Raskin attempted one more time, hand shaking slightly now. The Federal Reserve issued a statement explaining, "The Federal Reserve covered their rear, Professor. That is what institutions do when they are embarrassed. They got a phone call from a former Deputy Treasury Secretary. They gave special treatment to a firm whose directorate she was on. Only firm of its kind to ever get this access. Then they had to write a statement trying to explain it away. Make it sound routine. Make it sound normal. Make it sound like there was nothing unusual about a Fed president taking a call from a former Treasury official about a private firm." Vance leaned in, "But your spouse's nomination to the Federal Reserve collapsed anyway." "No? Why?" "Because senators from both parties looked at this situation and couldn't defend it. Even Joe Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia, conservative Democrat, your own party. He looked at the Reserve Trust scandal and said he couldn't support her nomination. That is how bad it was. So bad that even a fellow Democrat couldn't vote yes. So bad that her nomination died despite her impressive qualifications. So bad that she had to withdraw. The chamber buzzed. Low murmur. People processing. Understanding. So let me make sure I understand your position, Professor. You attack the revolving door. You hold hearings about former officials getting rich off government connections. You call it dishonesty. You demand reform. You lecture America about the problem. Meanwhile, your spouse is the poster child for revolving door dishonesty. Left government. Joined firm directorate. Firm needed government favor. She called government official. Firm got favor. She made over $1 million. And you think that is different. You think that is okay. You think Americans should just accept that because she was qualified. Silence. Raskin had no answer, no defense. just visible anger, frustration, the feeling of being trapped by his own insincerity. Rules for thee, but not for you. Again, you attack dishonesty while your family practices it. You demand responsibility while refusing to be answerable. You lecture everyone else while exempting yourself and your family. That isn't public service, Professor. That is using public service for private profit. That is the morass. That is everything Americans hate about Washington. The right section erupted again, standing now, some cheering. Finally, someone calling it out. Someone showing the insincerity. Someone making them answer. The consequences rippled outward like waves. Her nomination had collapsed. Couldn't get confirmed despite being confirmed twice before under Obama. Despite being obviously qualified by any objective standard. Despite having support from the financial industry. Couldn't survive the scandal. That is how dishonest it looked. Every Senate Banking Committee Republican had boycotted the vote. All of them. Refused to even show up. Unprecedented move. Said they wouldn't vote on any Fed nominees until questions about reserve trust were answered. The entire Federal Reserve nomination process ground to a halt over Sarah Bloom Raskin. Over one phone call and $1 million. Small business owners across America watched this, understood what they were seeing. They couldn't call Fed presidents. They couldn't get special access. They couldn't make one phone call and change denied applications to approved. They played by regulations. Regulations that didn't apply to people like the Raskins. Regulations for the little people. Special treatment for the elites. Vance's voice cut through the noise. That is round 2. Revolving door dishonesty. Government connections monetized for private profit. Phone calls to Fed officials. Special access no one else gets. Over $1 million in personal profit using your government for their gain. And the whole time, Professor Raskin lectures you about ethics. He paused. Allow the anger to build. But let us discuss the professor's favorite subject now. The Constitution. Due process rights of the accused. Basic fairness. Because round 3 is about how this constitutional law teacher destroyed all of those things. How he denied rights to his political opponents. How he destroyed evidence. How he ran a committee that violated every principle he claims to hold sacred. Round 3 is about to show you what Jamie Raskin really thinks about the Constitution when it gets in the way of his political goals. Raskin saw an opening. Thought he saw one. Tried to pivot to his legacy moment. His finest hour. The moment he thought history would remember him for. He straightened up. Found his moral command voice. That grave, serious tone. The voice of someone defending democracy itself. January 6th was an attack on our democracy. A fundamental assault on the peaceful transfer of constitutional law, Professor, you say? Vance's interruption was casual, almost friendly. That was the tick. When Vance sounded most casual, devastation was closest. Because I am fascinated by this, Professor. You teach constitutional law. You have taught it for 25 years. You teach pupils about due process, about the rights of the accused, about the requirement for fair proceedings, about how in America we don't convict people without giving them a chance to defend themselves, about how our entire system is built on the principle that accusers must prove their case. And the accused must have the opportunity to challenge that proof. You teach this, correct? These are core principles, constitutional fundamentals, the bedrock of American justice. Raskin nodded, cautious, sensing a trap but not seeing it yet. So let us discuss how you ran the January 6th investigation. Let us discuss the committee you served on. Let us discuss the process you used. Let us discuss what you did to those constitutional principles you supposedly revere. Because what you did, Professor, was take every principle you teach and throw it in the garbage. The left section of the spectators stirred. Uncomfortable. This was their narrative. January 6th was sacred ground, the day democracy almost died. Raskin was a hero of that day. This challenge felt wrong to them. The right section leaned forward. Finally, someone was going to say it. National stage. Prime time. The truth about that committee. Allow me to ensure I comprehend this, Professor. Help me with the constitutional law here. In America, when someone is accused of a serious crime, they get certain rights. Correct? Raskin nodded slowly. They get the right to know the evidence against them, the right to present their own evidence, the right to call witnesses on their behalf, the right to cross-examine witnesses against them, the right to challenge the accusations, the right to a fair process. These aren't optional rights, are they? These aren't privileges granted at the whim of prosecutors. These are constitutional guarantees, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, basic rights that apply to everyone. Another nod, more reluctant. And you teach this, Professor? You teach your pupils that these rights are sacred, that they protect all of us, that they are what separate America from tyrannies, that without these rights, we don't have justice. We just have power imposing its will. You teach that, correct? The Constitution guarantees it. So explain to me how your January 6th committee provided any of those rights to the people you accused. The chamber went silent. 9 members on that committee. Let us discuss how they got there. Speaker Pelosi created the committee. Appointed members. Republicans nominated 2 members. Jim Jordan from Ohio. Jim Banks from Indiana. 2 members who would actually investigate honestly, who would ask tough questions, who would challenge the narrative, who would demand evidence, who would insist on fairness. Vance's voice got harder. And what did Pelosi do? She rejected them. Unprecedented move. The House Speaker rejected duly nominated members of the minority party. Wouldn't let them serve. Well, because they might actually challenge the predetermined conclusion. Because they might actually demand due process. Because they might actually insist on fairness. He allowed that to sit. Instead, she appointed Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, 2 Republicans who already agreed with the Democrats. 2 Republicans who hated Trump as much as any Democrat. 2 Republicans who had already announced their conclusions before the investigation even started. And where are those 2 Republicans now, Professor? Where is Liz Cheney? Primaried, defeated, lost her seat by over 30 points. Where is Adam Kinzinger? Retired rather than face voters, both rejected by their own party for their partisan hunt. The left section squirmed. This wasn't how the story was supposed to go. So your committee, 9 Democrats, 2 anti-Trump Republicans. No actual opposition. No one to challenge your narrative. No one to demand fairness. No one to insist on due process. Just 11 people who already agreed on the conclusion before hearing any evidence. That isn't an investigation, Professor. That is a show trial. And a constitutional law teacher knows the difference. Raskin attempted to speak. Vance kept going. Then let us discuss how you presented evidence. Prime-time hearings. Very dramatic. Very compelling television. carefully edited videos, hand-picked testimony, selected documents, all very convincing, all pointing in one direction, all supporting one conclusion. Pause. But here is what you didn't do. You didn't present evidence that contradicted your narrative, evidence that showed Trump authorized National Guard troops, evidence that showed security failures by Capitol Police, evidence that showed FBI involvement in the crowd, evidence that would have provided context, evidence that would have challenged your story. All of that excluded, hidden, ignored, erased. The professor's face was reddening now. That isn't investigation. That is prosecution. Except even in real prosecutions, the accused gets rights, gets to present a defense, gets to cross-examine witnesses, gets to challenge the evidence, gets to call his own witnesses, gets a fair trial before conviction. Vance's voice rose slightly. But not in your committee, not in your process, not when a constitutional law teacher is running things. Then we skip all that due process stuff. Then we forget about rights. Then we just present one side and declare victory. The attack was relentless. Now imagine for a second that you are accused of a serious crime. Years in prison if convicted. You want a trial, right? A fair trial. You want your lawyer to present your evidence, to cross-examine the witnesses against you, to challenge the prosecution's case, to call witnesses who support your version of events. That is what you would want. That is what every American would want. That is what the Constitution guarantees. He paused. Allow people to imagine it. But now imagine the prosecutor said, "No, no defense allowed. We are going to present our evidence. We are going to call our witnesses. We are going to play our videos. But you don't get to respond. You don't get to cross-examine. You don't get to present contrary evidence. You don't get to call witnesses. You just sit there. Listen to accusations. Then we announce you are guilty." The chamber was absolutely still. How would you feel? Outraged, right? This is America. This is unconstitutional. This is tyranny. This is injustice. Everyone deserves a fair trial. Even guilty people get a defense. This violates everything America stands for. Vance turned directly to Raskin. But that is exactly what you did to your political opponents. You, a constitutional law teacher who teaches these rights, destroyed them for political purposes. You denied cross-examination. You excluded contrary evidence. You blocked defense witnesses. You held a one-sided show trial and called it an investigation. The professor attempted, voice shaking now, not with passion, with rage at being held answerable. Donald Trump is not on trial here tonight, Professor. You are. Your conduct, your violations of constitutional principles, your destruction of due process, your denial of basic rights. That is what we are examining. That is what America needs to see. A constitutional law teacher who violated the Constitution. Raskin attempted to invoke his son again. The tragedy card. The sympathy play. My son died right before January 6th. He died, and then I had to live through... Respect for your loss, Professor. I said that in round one. I meant it then. I mean it now. Your sorrow was real. Your agony was real. Your suffering was unimaginable. Vance's voice stayed gentle but firm. But your personal tragedy doesn't exempt you from constitutional requirements, doesn't give you the right to deny others their rights, doesn't make it okay to destroy evidence, doesn't justify running a partisan show trial. Your sorrow is real. Your violations are also real. Both can be true at the same time. The chamber held its breath. And here is what renders it even worse. When Republicans were about to take control of the House, when your committee was about to lose power, you destroyed evidence, deleted interviews, eliminated transcripts, got rid of documents, destroyed evidence before the opposition could review it. The left section went very quiet. This part they couldn't defend. Why would you do that, Professor? If your investigation was legitimate, if your evidence was solid, if your conclusions were justified, why destroy evidence? Why hide it from oversight? Why eliminate it before the opposing party could examine it? He allowed the question to hang. There is only one reason to destroy evidence: consciousness of guilt. Guilty people destroy evidence. Innocent investigators preserve everything. They want oversight. They welcome examination. They have nothing to hide. But you had something to hide, didn't you, Professor? So you destroyed it. The breathing room. Allow it to settle. 10 seconds. 15. Someone coughed. A chair creaked. That was all. Vance spoke again. Quietly now. Deadly quiet. And then you made criminal referrals. 4 referrals against Trump. Serious charges. Federal crimes. Years in prison. Obstruction. Conspiracy. Incitement. You accused him of crimes that could bar him from office forever. Could result in prison time. Serious accusations. Serious consequences. Pause. But Trump never got to present a defense to your committee. Never got to cross-examine your witnesses. Never got to challenge your evidence. Never got to call his own witnesses. Never got due process. You just announced he was guilty, referred him for prosecution, and called it justice. The professor's collapse was visible now. Face red, breathing hard. Not fighting anymore. Just trying to survive. So let me inquire of you directly, Professor. As a constitutional law teacher, as someone who teaches due process to law pupils, do you believe that people accused of crimes have the right to present a defense? Yes or no? Raskin hesitated. Knew it was a trap. Any answer would condemn him. In a court of law, yes, but what? Vance's voice was sharp now. Cutting. But what, Professor? But not when you are the one making accusations? But not when it is politically convenient to skip due process? But not when it is your political enemies? But not when following the Constitution might lead to a conclusion you don't like? He leaned forward. Constitutional law teacher. Those are the exact arguments tyrants make. Rights for everyone except my enemies. That isn't American. That isn't constitutional. That is authoritarian. That is what dictators say. That is what you did. The verdict. You destroyed evidence when caught. You denied basic rights to opponents. You excluded contrary evidence. You blocked cross-examination. You made criminal referrals without due process. You violated every principle you claim to defend. And you did it while lecturing America about protecting democracy. Vance turned to the lens. That isn't protecting democracy. That is weaponizing government against political opponents. That is what you accused Trump of doing. That is what you actually did. Constitutional law teacher. More like constitutional law violator. You know the principles. You teach the principles. You just don't believe they apply to you. Back to Raskin for the final line. Rules for thee, but not for you. Again, always, every time. The consequences rippled. Republicans taking control of House immediately launched oversight. What did the committee destroy? What evidence was hidden? Investigation of the investigators. Tables turned. Everything the committee ignored now being examined. Hunter Biden laptop. FBI involvement. Security failures blamed on Trump. All of it coming out now. Conservative legal groups filing bar complaints. Did Raskin's conduct violate legal ethics? Can a lawyer serve on a committee that denies due process while teaching constitutional law? Professional consequences looming. Reputational damage certain. Even moderate voters uncomfortable now. They had believed the January 6th narrative. Committee seemed legitimate. Hearings were compelling. But destruction of evidence, that didn't sit right. Denial of cross-examination? That felt wrong, even if you hate Trump, even if you think he is guilty. Due process matters. That is what makes America different. Raskin destroyed that for politics. Some academic colleagues quietly distancing themselves. Constitutional law professors who knew Raskin, who had shared panels with him, who had collaborated on papers. They couldn't defend this. They taught the same principles. They knew what he had done violated everything they stood for. Silent criticism. No public defense. The telling absence of support. Vance's voice cut through. That is round 3. Constitutional law teacher who destroyed constitutional rights. Who denied due process while teaching it. Who violated everything he claims to defend. But he loves attacking one group for ethics violations. Loves it. Can't stop talking about it. The Supreme Court. Pause. Build anticipation. So round 4 is about how he attacked Supreme Court justices for exactly what he was doing himself. How he demanded they follow ethics rules while he broke them. How he used his exact phrase, "rules for thee, but not for me," to attack them. And how that phrase describes him perfectly. Round 4 is going to be his own words destroying him. This is going to be satisfying. Professor Raskin thought he had found safe ground. This was his territory, his specialty, his crusade, attacking the Supreme Court. He had done it for years, had the speech memorized, knew every talking point, every accusation, every demand. He launched into it. Clarence Thomas and luxury trips, Samuel Alito and private jet flights, Harlan Crow and yacht vacations, undisclosed gifts, ethics violations, dishonesty at the highest court, the need for responsibility, the need for reform, the need for justice. His voice found that rhythm, that moral command tone, the righteous anger of someone calling out injustice, the concerned citizen demanding responsibility from the powerful. The constitutional scholar worried about the integrity of our institutions. The left section of the spectators loved it. Finally, something they could applaud. This was why they supported Raskin. This courage, this willingness to speak truth to power, this commitment to ethics and responsibility. They started clapping before he even finished. Some stood. Ovation building. Raskin finished his oration, voice ringing with conviction. The Supreme Court must be held answerable. No one is above the law. Ethics rules must apply to everyone. Silence for a beat. Then applause. Left section standing now. Full ovation. Their hero. Their champion. Speaking truth. Demanding justice. Vance started clapping. Slow. Deliberate. 1. Clap. 2, 3. The sound carried. Mocking. Obviously, mocking. The sarcastic applause, unmistakable. The right section joined in. Same rhythm, same tone, sarcastic, mocking, building. The left section looked confused. Why were they clapping? Then they saw Vance's face, saw the contempt, saw the setup, understood. This wasn't support. This was a trap, springing. That is intriguing coming from you, Professor. The applause died. Room went quiet. That was quite a speech. Quite a performance. No one is above the law. Ethics rules must apply to everyone. Beautiful words. Inspiring words. Powerful words. The kind of words that make people believe in justice again. The kind of words that restore faith in our system. Vance paused, smiled slightly. Dangerous smile. Allow me to ensure I comprehend your position, Professor. You believe Supreme Court justices should disclose their spouse's income, their spouse's financial interests. That transparency is essential to public trust. That hiding financial information undermines the integrity of the court. Raskin nodded. Confident. This was his ground. Absolutely. Without question. Then, let us discuss your disclosures, or the lack of them. Let us discuss your transparency, or the absence of it. Let us discuss your ethics, or the violations of them. The trap snapped shut. Because here is what is fascinating, Professor. Here is what reveals your character. Here is what shows Americans who you really are. Let us discuss dates. Let us discuss timeline. Let us discuss what you were doing when Vance pulled out papers. Letters, public statements, timeline documented recently. Very recently. While Americans were still struggling with inflation. While families were trying to make ends meet. While regular people were following the regulations and filing their disclosures honestly. You sent a letter. You and AOC sent it to Chief Justice John Roberts. Direct letter demanding answers. Demanding investigation. Demanding responsibility. He looked at the letter. 5 written questions about ethics scandals involving Justices Thomas and Alito. You demanded answers about their recusal standards, about steps taken to investigate, about whether rules were followed. Very forceful letter, very demanding letter. Moral command on full display. Pause. You wrote, and I am quoting directly here, "We question what steps you are actually taking." You called it glaring episodes of political bias and lack of disclosure. Strong words, accusatory words, words demanding transparency and responsibility from the highest court in the land. Vance looked up from the letter. But here is what makes this intriguing. Here is what makes this revealing. Here is what makes this the perfect example of your insincerity. When you sent that letter demanding disclosure and transparency from Supreme Court justices, you had been hiding your spouse's treasure for over 3 years. You had disclosed it late, 8 months late. Only after ethics complaints were filed. Only after her Fed nomination collapsed amid ethics concerns. Only after the entire Reserve Trust scandal exposed your family's revolving door dishonesty. The chamber absorbed that. The timeline. The insincerity. The audacity. So let me get this straight, Professor. You were lecturing the Chief Justice of the United States about disclosure requirements while you were in violation of disclosure requirements. You were demanding transparency from Supreme Court justices while you were hiding millions from the American populace. You were attacking ethics violations while you were committing ethics violations. Vance's voice dripped contempt. That isn't courage, Professor. That isn't principle. That is projection. That is a guilty man attacking others to distract from his own crimes. That is insincerity. So blatant, it is almost impressive in its shamelessness. He wasn't done. Pulled out another document. But let us use your own words. Let us let you condemn yourself. Because you wrote something else in that letter. Something particularly revealing. You wrote, and again I am quoting directly, "The court's far-right justices are free, not only to ignore the ethics rules that bind every other judge and to depart from the truth on their mandatory disclosure forms." Pause. Allow people to hear it. Ignore ethics rules. Depart from truth on mandatory disclosure forms. Your words, Professor, describing what you accused Supreme Court justices of doing. Vance looked directly at Raskin. You ignored ethics rules. You departed from truth on mandatory disclosure forms. 8 months late. Over $1 million hidden. While you were writing these words attacking justices, you were doing exactly what you accused them of doing. The exact same violations. The exact same conduct. But that is different when you do it. Right? Raskin attempted to speak. Couldn't find words. Hand to spectacles. 6th time. 7th. The tick everyone recognized. Now, here is more of your words. Same letter. They may now enjoy immunity from criticism by their outraged colleagues who dare to hold them to account for their clear trespasses on judicial objectivity and neutrality. Vance repeated it slowly. Immunity from criticism. Hold them to account. Your words. While you enjoyed immunity from criticism from your Democratic colleagues, while no one in your party held you to account for your violations, while party leadership ignored your ethics complaints, while the media gave you a pass, while you got away with exactly what you accused Supreme Court justices of doing. The assault continued. You held a hearing. Your committee, your show. You titled it, and I am not making this up, High Court, Low Standards, and Dark Money, Flagging a Supreme Ethics Crisis in America. Low Standards, Ethics Crisis. Your hearing, your words, your accusations. He pulled out testimony. At that hearing, you said, and I am quoting from the official transcript, I never thought I would live to see the day where justices have their own billionaire sugar daddies who give them houses and automobiles and private school tuitions. Vance repeated it slower. Billionaire sugar daddies. That is your phrase, Professor, for Harlan Crow giving gifts to Justice Thomas. Billionaire sugar daddies, corrupting justices. The kill shot coming. But your spouse got over $1 million from a firm right after making a phone call to the Federal Reserve on their behalf. Right after using her government connections to get them unprecedented access. That isn't a sugar daddy. That isn't dishonesty. That is just what? Legitimate compensation. Earned income. That is different somehow? No answer. Raskin had no answer. Here is another statement. You wrote to a House chairman demanding investigation of the Supreme Court ethics crisis. You wrote, under the Roberts Court's rules for thee and not for me approach to judicial ethics, the court's far-right justices are free, not only to ignore the ethics rules that bind every other judge. Vance stopped, allowed those 5 words to hang in the air. Rules for thee and not for me. That is your phrase, Professor. Your exact phrase describing what you accuse the Supreme Court of doing. And you are right. You are absolutely right. It is wrong. Rules should apply equally. No one should be above the law. No one should get special treatment. Everyone should follow the same ethics requirements. Long pause. Building to the climax. But, Professor, you are describing yourself. You aren't describing the Supreme Court. You are describing Jamie Raskin. You are rules for thee and not for me. Literally, precisely, exactly. You demand disclosure from justices while not disclosing yourself. You demand ethics investigations while violating ethics rules. You demand responsibility while refusing to be answerable. You demand transparency while hiding millions. You attack others for exactly what you do yourself. The chamber erupted, right section on their feet cheering. Finally, his own words, his own standard applied to him. Perfect justice. Perfect symmetry. He set the standard. Now he is being judged by it. Raskin's face was deep red now, not righteous anger, not moral passion, just caught, exposed, humiliated. Visible rage at being held to his own standard. The intellectual who had spent his career lecturing others now being lectured. The ethics preacher being called out for ethics violations. The constitutional teacher being destroyed by his own words. This is what, about, he attempted. Desperate. This is your standard, Professor. Your rules. Your words. Your demands. Applied to you. If you can't meet the standards you set for others, maybe you should lower your standards. Or stop setting them, one or the other. But you can't demand everyone else follow rules you won't follow. That isn't principle. That is insincerity. Vance turned to the lens. Final statement building. Allow me to use your exact words, Professor. Your phrase, the one you used to attack the Supreme Court. Dramatic pause. Everyone leaning forward. Rules for thee, but not for you. He allowed it to land. Allow it to sink in. That is what you said. That is what you accused them of. And you are right. That is wrong. Rules should apply to everyone equally. No one should be above the law. No one should get special treatment. Everyone should disclose their finances honestly. Everyone should be transparent. Everyone should follow ethics rules. Everyone should be held answerable. Another pause. Longer. But, Professor, you are describing yourself. You are the one with rules for thee, but not for me. You are the one who demands disclosure while hiding millions. You are the one who attacks ethics violations while committing them. You are the one who lectures about responsibility while refusing to be answerable. You are the one who demands transparency while operating in shadows. You are the one who sets standards you can't meet. Turn to lens. Direct address to America. This is Jamie Raskin, the ethics preacher who violates ethics, the constitutional teacher who ignores the Constitution, the responsibility crusader who refuses responsibility, the transparency advocate who hides millions, the man who demands everyone follow rules he won't follow, the man who attacks others for what he does himself, and when caught, when exposed, when held to his own standard, gets angry, gets defensive, gets self-righteous, but never gets honest, never gets answerable, never follows his own rules. Back to Raskin. Final line. Your phrase, Professor. Your words applied to you. Rules for thee, but not for you. You are right. It is wrong. Look in the mirror. The consequences were immediate. Conservative media went supernova. Every outlet playing the clip. His exact phrase used against him. Perfect. Undeniable. Devastating. The man who set the standard failing to meet it. His own words condemning him. No way to defend it. No way to spin it. Just pure insincerity exposed. Republican senators immediately citing it. Whenever Raskin demanded Supreme Court ethics hearings, they would reference this moment. Before we investigate justices, maybe investigate the congressman who violated the same ethics rules. Effective counter. Complete shutdown of his moral command. Can't attack others when your own house is on fire. Progressive groups torn. They wanted to defend him. He was their man, their voice on the court, their ethical standard bearer. But this was too blatant, too obvious, too documented. His exact phrase used against him. Even sympathetic observers struggling, even friends uncomfortable. The insincerity too perfect, the irony too complete. Liberal voters feeling betrayed. They had believed in him, thought he was different, thought he was principled, thought he actually cared about ethics and responsibility. Seeing now, he was just another politician, just another hypocrite, just another member of the elite who thinks rules don't apply to them. That betrayal hurt worse than any Republican attack. Not policy difference, personal betrayal of trust. Supreme Court justices saying nothing publicly. Didn't need to. Raskin had destroyed his own credibility. His attacks now meaningless. Who cares what he says about ethics? He is a hypocrite who violated the same rules he demands others follow. His words carry no weight. His accusations ring hollow. His crusade is over. Vance's voice cut through again. That is round 4. His exact words, his exact standard, his exact phrase applied to him. Rules for thee, but not for you. Perfect description of Jamie Raskin. But there is one more thing, one more scandal, one more betrayal. Because while Professor Raskin was attacking Trump's family, demanding investigations, calling for responsibility, he was protecting Biden's family from investigation. He was dismissing evidence. He was attacking investigators. He was covering up dishonesty. Round 5 is about obstruction, about choosing party loyalty over constitutional duty, about protecting the powerful while pretending to fight for the powerless. This is the final scandal, the final betrayal, and it shows you everything you need to know about who Jamie Raskin really is. Professor Raskin knew exactly what was coming, saw it from a mile away, tried to get ahead of it. Preemptive defense, started talking fast, panicked stream of words, no pauses, just deflection after deflection. Conspiracy theories, right-wing media, debunked allegations, politically motivated attacks, fairy tales, lies, the whole defensive playbook all at once. 2 minutes straight. No pause for breath. Stream of consciousness. Panic. The academic in full retreat. The prosecutor sensing blood in the water. The politician trying desperately to control a narrative that was slipping through his fingers like water. Vance just stood there. Thick folder in his hand. Bank records. Committee transcripts. Official testimony. All public information. All documented. All undeniable. Just waiting. Patient. Letting the professor exhaust himself. Letting him use up all his defenses. Letting him show America how desperate he was. Finally, Raskin ran out of words. Ran out of steam. Stood there breathing hard. Looking at Vance, knowing what was coming. Knowing he had no defense. Knowing the evidence was about to bury him. Done. One word. Calm, still calm. That deadly prosecutor, calm. That meant the case was airtight. The evidence was overwhelming. The verdict was certain. Raskin didn't answer. Couldn't. Allow me to ensure I comprehend your position, Professor. You are the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee. That means you oversee the executive branch. You investigate dishonesty. You investigate wrongdoing. You investigate when politicians abuse power for personal gain. That is your job. That is your responsibility. That is your constitutional authority. Congressional oversight. The founders envisioned exactly this. A check on executive power. You teach this in your classes? Raskin managed a nod. Wary. Essential function of Congress. Oversight of the President. Oversight of his administration. Oversight of his family. Making sure no one abuses power. Making sure no one gets rich off public service. Making sure no one uses government connections for private gain. All the things you lecture about. All the things you write about. All the things you investigate when Republicans are involved. Vance's voice got harder. But let us discuss what you actually do. Not what you say. Not what you teach. Not what you lecture about. What you actually do when it is your job to investigate dishonesty. What you actually do when it is a Democrat in the White House. What you actually do when it is someone from your party. Let us discuss your actual conduct, your actual record, your actual choices. He opened the folder. Bank records visible. House Oversight Committee. Republican majority. James Comer, chairman, starts investigating Biden family finances. Subpoenas bank records. Reviews financial transactions. Traces currency. Millions of dollars from foreign sources. China, Romania, Ukraine, Russia, all flowing to Biden family members through shell firms. Complex transactions, but traceable, documented. Bank records don't lie. Pause. Allow that to sink in. Now your job is ranking member. Oversight, even of your own party. Especially of your own party. Constitutional duty. Oversight doesn't stop because you like the president. Oversight doesn't stop because he is in your party. Oversight applies to everyone. Not just Republicans. Everyone. That is what you teach. That is what you say. That is your duty. The chamber was absolutely silent now. But here is what you actually did. Here is your actual record. Here is how you actually responded to evidence of dishonesty. You defended Biden every single time. Every accusation. Every piece of evidence. Every revelation. You defended him. You deflected for him. You denied for him. You attacked the investigators. You protected the investigated. Every single time. Vance started listing each item. A hammer blow. Chairman Comer presents evidence of millions from China to Biden family members. Your response? Conspiracy theory. No investigation, no follow-up, just immediate dismissal. Chairman Comer shows bank records, payments to 9 different Biden family members. Your response? No smoking gun, no curiosity, no questions, just deflection. Chairman Comer reveals a check. $200,000 from James Biden to Joe Biden. Documented bank record. Canceled check. Your response? Thoroughly demolished lie. Thoroughly demolished? A bank record demolished? How do you demolish a bank record? It exists. It is real. It is documented. But you called it a lie. Chairman Comer traces $5 million from foreign sources to Biden family members. Your response? Fairy tale. $5 million in documented transactions is a fairy tale. The contempt in Vance's voice was withering every time. Pattern never changes. Evidence presented. You dismiss it. Bank records? Conspiracy theory. Financial transactions? No smoking gun. Witness testimony? Thoroughly demolished. Documentary evidence? Fairy tale. Your job is oversight. Your practice is cover-up. He pulled out testimony. Direct quotes from Raskin. Allow me to use your own words again, Professor. Because your words reveal everything. Chairman Comer asks you to apologize. Direct request. Public letter. You had been spreading disinformation about the evidence collected by the committee. That isn't my characterization. That is the Republican chairman formally asking the Democratic ranking member to correct the record, to apologize for misrepresenting facts. Vance looked at the letter. Your response? You doubled down, called it widely discredited, politically motivated, impeachment inquiry. You wrote, and I am quoting, nearly a year into their disappointing fishing expedition, their own expert witnesses and many House Republicans confess that there is no evidence. He looked up. No evidence. That is what you said. Despite bank records showing millions from foreign sources, despite financial transactions documented and traced, despite the $200,000 check from James Biden to Joe Biden, despite testimony, despite documents, despite everything. No evidence. You saw evidence. You dismissed evidence. You called evidence disinformation. The personal attack began. But let us discuss what this really means. Let us discuss what Americans see when they watch you do this. Let us discuss the two justice systems, the two Americas, the rules for you versus the rules for them. Vance's voice became more passionate, more personal. Imagine you are an ordinary American. You work hard. You follow the regulations. You pay your taxes honestly. You report every dollar you make because you have to. Because if you don't, the IRS destroys you. Penalties, interest, audits, maybe prison if they think you are hiding something. One mistake on your tax return, one error, one unreported payment. They come after you with everything they have. The right section nodding. They knew exactly this feeling. But the Biden family gets millions from foreign governments. Governments with business before the United States. Governments that want favors. Governments that want access. Governments that want influence. The currency flows through shell firms, complex transactions designed to hide the source. The family members lie about it repeatedly on television, in interviews. Vance's voice rose. And what happens? Professor Raskin says there is no evidence, calls it a conspiracy theory, attacks the investigators, protects the family, obstructs the oversight, uses his position as ranking member not to investigate dishonesty, but to cover it up, not to demand responsibility, but to prevent it, not to follow the evidence, but to dismiss it. The kill shot. That isn't oversight, Professor. That is obstruction. That isn't your job. That is you choosing not to do your job. That is you choosing party loyalty over constitutional duty. That is you choosing to protect powerful Democrats over demanding truth. That is you choosing your political career over your oath to the Constitution. Raskin barely standing now, posture completely slumped, voice weak when he tried to speak. The investigation found no evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden. Because you obstructed the investigation. Vance's voice cracked like a whip. Sudden, sharp, devastating. Because you dismissed evidence before it could be examined. Because you attacked investigators before they could investigate. Because you called bank records conspiracy theories. Because you declared findings disinformation before hearings were complete. Because you made sure they couldn't find anything by refusing to look for anything. That isn't an investigation finding nothing. That is obstruction preventing a finding. He leaned forward. That isn't oversight. That is cover-up. That is accomplice behavior. That is dishonesty protecting dishonesty. That is the morass protecting the morass. That is everything Americans hate about Washington. That is you, Professor. That is who you really are when the cameras are off and the Constitution gets in the way of your party's power. The summary. 5 rounds. Final verdict. Allow me to tell you who Jamie Raskin is. Allow me to summarize your career for America. Because we have covered 5 rounds tonight. 5 scandals. 5 betrayals. But they all have one thing in common. One pattern. One truth. Vance counted on his fingers. Each point another nail. 1. You hid your spouse's treasure for 8 months while lecturing everyone about transparency. While Americans reported every dollar honestly, you hid millions. While you demanded responsibility from others, you refused to be answerable yourself. 2. Your spouse used government connections for private profit. The revolving door you attack. The dishonesty you condemn. Your family did it. Made over $1 million from it. While Americans couldn't get banks to return their calls, your spouse called a Fed president and got unprecedented access. 3. You destroyed evidence and denied due process while teaching constitutional law. Created a partisan show trial. Excluded defense. Destroyed evidence. Made criminal referrals without fairness. Everything you teach is wrong. You practiced. 4. You attacked Supreme Court justices for ethics violations while committing the exact same violations yourself. Used your exact phrase, "rules for thee but not for me," to attack them. That phrase describes you perfectly. Your words condemn you. 5. You protected Biden family dishonesty while claiming to fight dishonesty. Dismissed evidence, attacked investigators, obstructed oversight, chose party over duty, chose power over truth, chose politics over the Constitution. Long pause. Allow it all to sink in. You lecture everyone about ethics, but you violate ethics. You teach constitutional law, but you ignore the Constitution. You demand responsibility, but you refuse to be answerable. You attack dishonesty, but you protect it when it is your party. You set standards you can't meet. You demand rules you won't follow. You are the fraud. You are the hypocrite. You are the dishonesty. You are everything wrong with Washington. He paused, then delivered the final judgment. Constitutional law teacher, you are a fraud. Credentials without character. Degrees without integrity. Knowledge without honesty. Education without ethics. Words without meaning. You know the principles. You teach the principles. You lecture about the principles. But you don't believe they apply to you. You don't follow them yourself. You are the perfect example of elite insincerity. Rules for everyone else. Exemptions for you. One more pause. Rules for thee, but not for you. Not just what you accuse others of. It is what you are. It is your practice. It is your life. It is your career. It is your confession. Turn to lens. Final statement to America. This is Professor Jamie Raskin, the ethics preacher who violates ethics, the constitutional expert who destroys constitutional rights, the oversight chairman who obstructs oversight, the moral voice who has no morals, the man who lectures you while exempting himself, the man who demands you follow rules he breaks, the man who attacks others for what he does, the elite who thinks he is above the law, the hypocrite who got caught. Back to Raskin for the last line. Professor. Class dismissed. You failed. The chamber exploded. Right section on their feet. Cheering. Applause. Finally. Someone said it all. Someone put it together. Someone showed the pattern. Someone exposed the fraud. Left section silent. Some angry. Some shocked. Some troubled. Checking phones. Verifying facts. Could they be verified? Every single one. Public record. All of it. Bank records, ethics complaints, committee transcripts, financial disclosures, his own words from his own letters. All documented, all real, all undeniable. The consequences radiated outward. Republican House launching investigations into Raskin's conduct. Did his behavior warrant ethics inquiries, bar complaints, professional sanctions? The tables fully turned. The investigator being investigated, the accuser being accused, the prosecutor being prosecuted. Conservative movement energized like never before. Finally, someone who called it out. Someone who didn't back down. Someone who put the evidence together. Someone who made the case. The insincerity exposed. The fraud revealed. The elite unmasked. Progressive movement deflated. They had believed in him, thought he was different, thought he was principled, seeing now he was just another politician, just another hypocrite, just another elite who lectures others while exempting himself. That betrayal would linger. That disillusionment would spread. Moderate voters watching saw what they suspected. This is why they don't trust Washington. This is why they are cynical. This is why they think the system is rigged. Because it is. Rules for regular people. Exemptions for the elite. Consequences for you. Protection for them. Two Americas. Two justice systems. Raskin proved it all tonight. His district voters seeing a different side. Many had voted for him thinking he was honest, principled, fighting for them. Now, seeing he was fighting for his party, for his power, for himself. Not for them, never for them. Primary challengers emerging. Time for honest representation. The vultures circling. His national reputation as ethical crusader destroyed. One debate, 5 rounds, 5 scandals, 5 betrayals. Career in ruins, legacy in ashes. The ethics preacher exposed as a fraud. Vance's final words. That is all. 5 rounds, 5 scandals, 1 pattern, 1 truth. Jamie Raskin is everything wrong with Washington. Everything Americans hate about politics. Everything the founders warned against. Elite insincerity. Selective responsibility. Rules for thee, but not for me. And he just got exposed for all of America to see. Brief pause. Share this everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, email, text. Everyone needs to see what the ethics preacher really is. Everyone needs to understand how the system really works. Everyone needs to know who is really corrupt. Comment below which scandal was worst. The hidden treasure, the corrupt phone call, the destroyed rights, the Supreme Court hypocrisy, the Biden protection. Tell us. Let America know. Subscribe because Washington is full of Jamie Raskins, Democrats, Republicans, credential-worshipping hypocrites who lecture you while exempting themselves, who demand you follow rules they break, who attack others for what they do. Time to expose them all. Time to hold them all answerable. Time to drain the swamp for real. More coming. Don't miss it. This is just the beginning. 5 scandals. 1 man. 1 pattern that reveals everything. But here is what Americans need to understand. Jamie Raskin isn't unusual. He isn't one bad apple. He isn't an outlier. He isn't the exception that proves the rule. Jamie Raskin is typical. He represents the Democratic Party perfectly. He embodies everything they have become. He demonstrates how the system really works. Look at the pattern across the entire party. Not just Raskin. Nancy Pelosi. Her husband making millions trading stocks in firms she regulates. Perfectly timed trades right before major legislation. Options purchased days before announcements that send stock prices soaring. She claims she doesn't tell him anything. He is just that good at timing. Just that lucky. 40 years of perfect timing. She lectures you about insider trading while her family profits from information nobody else has. Adam Schiff. Leaked classified information to the media for years. Lied about having evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. Went on television repeatedly claiming he had seen proof. Direct evidence. Undeniable proof. The evidence never materialized. The collusion never existed. But he kept lying, kept leaking, kept attacking. No consequences. No responsibility. Now he is a senator. Eric Swalwell had a relationship with a Chinese spy, a literal Chinese intelligence officer, compromised by foreign intelligence. And he still serves on the House Intelligence Committee, still has access to classified information, still makes decisions about national security. The Democratic Party protected him, kept him on the committee, claimed Republicans were being partisan. A congressman compromised by Chinese intelligence is partisan? That is national security. Maxine Waters lives in a $6 million mansion outside her district while representing one of the poorest districts in California. Made millions in Congress. Decades of enrichment through public service. Lives like a queen while her constituents struggle. And she lectures everyone about economic inequality. About the rich not paying their fair share. While she became rich through government service and pays no political price. This is the pattern. This is the Democratic Party. This is how it works. Rules for thee, not for me. Ethics for everyone else. Exemptions for us. Responsibility for opponents. Protection for allies. And the party protects them. Always. Every time. When a Democrat has a scandal, what happens? Party leadership rallies around them. Media downplays it. Other Democrats dismiss it as politically motivated. Republicans pouncing without evidence. Conspiracy theory. The defensive playbook deployed immediately. No investigation. no responsibility, just protection. But when a Republican has even an allegation, even a rumor, even an anonymous source, 24/7 media coverage, demands for resignation, ethics investigations, the full weight of institutional power crushing down, different standards, different rules, different systems of justice. Look at how they handled Raskin's violations. Ethics complaints filed by conservative groups. Documented, detailed, public record. And what did Democrats do? Nothing. No investigation. No hearing. No consequences. Nancy Pelosi didn't demand responsibility. Chuck Schumer didn't call for investigation. The media barely covered it. Buried it on page 17. Mentioned it once and moved on. But Clarence Thomas gets a vacation from a friend. Media goes supernova. Congressional hearings. Demands for impeachment. Ethics investigations. The full court press. Different standards for different parties. Different rules for different teams. The media is complicit in all of this. They aren't journalists anymore. They are partisan activists with press credentials. When a conservative has a scandal, they investigate. They dig. They hound. They demand answers. They won't let it go. That is their job. That is journalism. But when a progressive has a scandal, they ignore it, downplay it, make excuses, attack the accusers. Republicans pounce on critics. Say without evidence. The defensive framing automatic. The protection instinctual. The cover-up collaborative. Raskin's ethics violations barely mentioned until this debate. His reserve trust dishonesty covered once and forgotten. His January 6th evidence destruction erased. His Supreme Court hypocrisy unremarked. His Biden family protection unchallenged. The media saw all of it, knew all of it, chose to ignore all of it. Because he is on their team. Because he says the right things. Because he attacks the right people. That isn't journalism. That is propaganda. That is state media in all but name. That is Pravda with better production values. And this is why Americans rejected this in the 2024 election. Why Trump won. Why Vance won. Why Republicans won the House and Senate. Because Americans are tired of it. Tired of the double standards. Tired of the lectures from hypocrites. Tired of rules for thee, but not for me. Tired of being told they are the problem while watching elites enrich themselves. Tired of being called deplorables and bitter clingers and ultra-MAGA by people who think they are better but behave worse. Look at how Democrats campaign versus how they govern. On the campaign trail, they are socialists. They rail against the rich. They demand equality. They promise to fight for the little guy. They attack corporations and billionaires and the wealthy elite. Eat the rich. Tax the wealthy. Level the playing field. But then look at how they live. Bernie Sanders, the socialist. 3 houses. Millionaire. Made a fortune attacking millionaires. Wrote a book about inequality. Got rich off it. Now lectures from his lake house about how you need to share more. You need to pay more. You need to sacrifice more. While he keeps his 3 houses and his $1 million fortune. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went to the Met Gala. $35,000 ticket. Wore a dress that said "Tax the Rich" at an event for the ultra-wealthy. Surrounded by billionaires and celebrities. Taking selfies with the elite she claims to oppose. And she sees no insincerity, no contradiction, no problem. She is special. She is enlightened. The rules are for you, not for her. Elizabeth Warren made millions as a law professor, lives in a multi-million-dollar mansion, built a fortune while claiming to fight for poor and middle class. Her signature issue, fighting economic inequality while being economically unequal, while being part of the wealthy elite, while benefiting from the system she claims is rigged. But that is different. She is using her wealth for good. She is one of the good rich people. And Raskin fits this perfectly. Constitutional law teacher. Made millions teaching law. His spouse made millions more in the revolving door. They live in a multi-million-dollar home. They are wealthy elites by any definition. And he lectures you about economic justice, about fairness, about equality, while hiding millions, while enriching his family through government connections, while living a life of luxury funded by your tax dollars and elite dishonesty. This is the con. This is how it works. They preach socialism for you, capitalism for them, government control of your life, freedom for theirs, rules you must follow, rules they can ignore, sacrifice you must make, exemptions they enjoy. And why do voters keep electing them? How do they get away with it? Several reasons. Media covers for them, hides their hypocrisy, downplays their scandals, attacks their critics, makes excuses, provides protection. That is crucial. Without media protection, they couldn't survive. The coverage would be relentless. The scandals would be everywhere. The voters would know. But the media hides it, so voters don't see it. The party protects them. When scandal breaks, Democrats circle wagons, defend their own, attack accusers, dismiss evidence, provide political cover, make it partisan, make it about Republicans attacking, not about Democrats being corrupt. Change the subject, shift the focus, protect the guilty. That is party loyalty. That is how power works. Academia celebrates them. Raskin is a law professor. His colleagues don't criticize him. They defend him. Fellow constitutional law professors who know he violated the Constitution, they stay silent. They protect him. Why? Because he is one of them. Elite protecting elite. Credentialed protecting credentialed. The club protecting the club. But the tide is turning. 2024 showed that. Americans finally seeing through it. Finally rejecting it. Finally voting against it. Trump won because he called out this hypocrisy. Vance won because he prosecuted this case. Republicans won because Democrats embody this fraud. What does this reveal about the broader system? Credential worship is dead. Raskin has the credentials, Harvard Law, constitutional law teacher, congressional leader, impressive resume. Means nothing, means less than nothing because credentials without character are worthless. Degrees without integrity are meaningless. Education without ethics is dangerous. Americans learned this, stopped worshiping credentials, started demanding character. Trump has no law degree, no academic credentials, no elite pedigree. But he kept his promises, fought for his supporters, didn't pretend to be something he is not. That authenticity matters more than credentials. That character matters more than degrees. That results matter more than resumes. Voters figured that out. Vance has the credentials, Yale Law, elite education, but he stayed connected to his roots, stayed honest about where he came from, stayed committed to fighting for regular people, combined credentials with character. That is the model. That is what works. Not credentials alone. Not character alone. Both together. Grounded in truth. The swamp is real. That is the second lesson. It isn't a conspiracy theory. It isn't hyperbole. It isn't partisan rhetoric. It is documented reality. Raskin is proof. The way he enriched his family. The way he hid it. The way he lectured others. The way he was protected. The way the system defended him. The way the media covered for him. The way his party shielded him. That is the swamp. That is how it works. That is what it looks like. Elite class protecting elite class. Politicians protecting politicians. Wealthy protecting wealthy. Connected protecting connected. Against regular Americans. Against the regulations. Against the Constitution. Against responsibility. That is the swamp. And it is real. And it is documented, and Americans see it now. See it. Term limits matter. That is the third lesson. Raskin has been in Congress for decades. Every year in Washington he got more corrupt, more disconnected, more elite, more protected, more convinced the rules don't apply to him. That is what happens to career politicians. They get corrupted by the system. They become the swamp. They forget who they represent. They start representing themselves. Term limits would prevent this. Force regular return to real world. Force living under the laws they pass. Force facing consequences of their actions. Make them temporary public servants. Not permanent ruling class. Not career politicians. Not lifelong elites. Just Americans serving briefly and returning home. The way founders intended. The way it should work. Truth over power. That is the fourth lesson. That is the weapon. That is how you fight this. Not with personal attacks, not with insults, not with matching their dishonesty. With truth, with evidence, with documents, with facts, with undeniable reality. Vance's approach. Facts. Evidence, bank records, letters, testimony, Raskin's own words, public documents, undeniable proof, the truth spoken clearly, repeatedly, undeniably. That is the weapon. That is what they can't defend against. That is what defeats them. Raskin had no answer to the truth, no defense against facts, no response to evidence, no way to spin bank records, no way to dismiss his own words. Truth cut through all his deflections, all his excuses, all his credentials, all his lectures. Just truth. Plain truth. Documented truth. Undeniable truth. That is how you win, not by becoming like them, by being better than them, by telling the truth, by demanding responsibility, by refusing to accept double standards, by holding everyone to same rules, by fighting insincerity with honesty, by meeting dishonesty with integrity, by answering lies with truth. What can Americans do? What is the path forward? Vote them out. All of them. Democrats who protect dishonesty, Republicans who enable it, anyone who thinks rules don't apply to them, anyone who lectures others while exempting themselves, anyone who enriches themselves through public service, anyone who refuses responsibility. Vote them out. Primary them. Defeat them. Replace them. That is step one. Demand term limits. Support candidates who pledge to them. Pressure Congress to pass them. Make it a litmus test. No career politicians. No lifelong incumbents. no permanent ruling class, temporary public service. Then return home. Live under laws you passed. Face consequences of your votes. That is how it should work. Support honest candidates, not credentialed candidates, not connected candidates, not elite candidates, honest candidates. Character over credentials. Integrity over resumes. People who will actually represent you, not people who will lecture you, not people who think they are better than you, people who remember where they came from, people who will fight for you. Share truth everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, email, text, word of mouth. They hate exposure. They fear truth. They depend on ignorance. So share truth. Share evidence. Share facts. Share stories like this. Make sure everyone knows. Make sure everyone sees. Make sure everyone understands. Truth is the weapon. Use it. Hold everyone answerable. Not just Democrats, not just Republicans. Everyone. Both parties, all politicians, every elected official. Same standards for all. No exceptions, no exemptions, no special treatment. Rules apply equally, or they don't exist. Responsibility applies to everyone, or it means nothing. Demand it from everyone. Reject double standards. When media gives Democrats a pass, call it out. When party protects corrupt members, demand answers. When elites exempt themselves, refuse to accept it. Make noise. Raise hell. Don't let them normalize dishonesty. Don't let them make insincerity acceptable. Don't let them convince you this is just how it works. It isn't. It shouldn't be. Demand better. The message is simple. Washington is full of Jamie Raskins, Democrats and Republicans, both parties, the entire system, credential-worshipping hypocrites who lecture you while exempting themselves, who demand you follow rules they break, who attack others for what they do, who enrich themselves while claiming to serve you. But exposure works. Truth works. Responsibility works. 2024 proved that. Trump won. Vance won. Republicans won because Americans said no. Said enough. Said we are tired of this. Said we want better. Said we demand honesty. Said we will vote out dishonesty. Said we will drain the swamp for real. This is just the beginning. This debate exposed one man. But the pattern applies to hundreds, maybe thousands. Every level of government, federal, state, local, they are everywhere. The hypocrites, the frauds, the elites who think rules don't apply. Time to expose them all. Time to hold them answerable. Time to demand better. Time to vote them out. Time to replace them with honest people. Time to restore government of the people. By the people, for the people. Not government of the elite, by the elite, for the elite. That is the mission. That is the fight. That is what this debate started. And we aren't stopping. Not until they are all exposed. Not until they are all defeated. Not until the swamp is actually drained. Not until government actually works for Americans again. Jamie Raskin is just the beginning. The ethics preacher exposed as a fraud. The constitutional teacher who violated the Constitution. The moral voice with no morals. The first domino. Many more to fall. And they are all watching this. All the other Raskins in Washington, all the other hypocrites, all the other frauds. They are watching. They are worried. They are scared. Because they know truth is coming for them too. Exposure is coming. Responsibility is coming. Justice is coming. That is why they will try to dismiss this. Call it partisan. Call it political. Call it attacks. Call it conspiracy theories. They always do. That is their defense. Make it about the accusers, not about their crimes. Shift focus. Change subject. Attack critics. Standard playbook. Don't let them. Keep focus on truth, on evidence, on their conduct, on their hypocrisy, on their dishonesty. Don't let them change subject. Don't let them shift focus. Don't let them make it about anything except their own actions, their own words, their own violations, their own crimes. The truth will set you free, and the truth will destroy them. That is what tonight proved. That is what this debate showed. That is what 5 rounds of evidence demonstrated. Truth is the weapon, and it works. So share this, subscribe, comment. Let America know. Let everyone see. Let the truth spread. Let the exposure continue. Let the accountability begin. This is how we win. This is how we take back our country. This is how we restore honest government. This is how we drain the swamp. One truth at a time. One exposure at a time. One hypocrite at a time. One election at a time. Jamie Raskin was first. Many more coming. Stay tuned. If this opened your eyes about Jamie Raskin and the system that protects politicians like him, subscribe right now. Click that button. Join this movement. Because what you just watched, that is just one man, one scandal, one debate. Washington is full of them. Both parties, all levels. And we are going to expose them all. Share this everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, email. Text your family. Text your friends. Text everyone you know. This needs to go viral. Everyone needs to see what the ethics preacher really is. Everyone needs to understand how the system really works. Everyone needs to know who is actually corrupt. Copy the link. Paste it everywhere. Make this spread. Drop a comment right now. Tell us which scandal made you angriest. Was it the hidden treasure? 8 months hiding millions while lecturing you about transparency. Was it the corrupt phone call? His spouse getting rich off government connections. Was it the destroyed rights? The constitutional teacher destroying the Constitution? Was it the Supreme Court hypocrisy? His own phrase condemning him. Was it the Biden protection? Covering up dishonesty he is supposed to investigate. Tell us. Let America know. Let your voice be heard. And subscribe if you haven't already. Because Washington is full of Jamie Raskins. Credential-worshipping hypocrites who think they are better than you. Who lecture you while exempting themselves. Who demand you follow rules they break. Who attack others for what they do themselves. Democrats and Republicans, both parties, the entire swamp. Time to expose them all. Time to hold them answerable. Time to vote them out. Time to drain the swamp for real. More content coming. More exposures. More truth. More accountability. We are just getting started. This fight is just beginning. The swamp is deep. The dishonesty is widespread. The hypocrisy is everywhere. But truth is our weapon. And it works. Tonight proved it. Jamie Raskin destroyed by truth, by evidence, by his own words, by undeniable facts. That is the model. That is the strategy. That is how we win. Document everything, expose everything, share everything, hold everyone answerable. No exceptions, no exemptions, no mercy for hypocrites, just truth, just evidence, just facts, just justice. Subscribe now, share now, comment now. Let us make this the most viral political video of the year. Let everyone see it. Let everyone know. Let the truth spread. Let the exposure continue. Let the accountability begin. Because they are counting on you staying silent. They are counting on you not caring. They are counting on you accepting this. They are counting on you thinking nothing ever changes. They are counting on you giving up. Prove them wrong. Make noise. Spread truth. Demand better. Vote them out. Take back your country. Restore honest government. Drain the swamp. For real this time. Not just talk. Action. Real action. Starting now. Starting with you. Starting with sharing this video. The truth is our weapon. Time to use it. Let us go.